This module's presentation is on the anatomy of an ethical theory and Rachel's minimum conception of morality. You should have the book we are using, Elements of Moral Philosophy, by now. As you see, we'll be using it right away. If you do not have it, it may be available in the school library. The author's name is James Rachels. In addition to this book, we will be using a number of PDFs. So what's in this presentation? This is the presentation for the first week. As such, it is quite short. It is designed to look briefly at the question, what is ethics, and then to introduce you to an important structure we'll be using throughout the semester to analyze ethical theories that I call the anatomy of an ethical theory. This is simply a convenient way to break apart ethical theories into distinct conceptual elements to make them more understandable. As such, this is quite an important module since many other modules will build upon this one. What is ethics? Because moral views vary so widely between individuals, cultures, times, and places, defining exactly what morality is a daunting task. Roughly speaking, however, all ethical theories try to tell us how it is we ought to live our lives. In some ways, however, this definition, even as vague as it is now, is circular, since ought is a moral term, and what we are trying to do is define ethics or morality. Rachels points out that anything beyond this very simple definition, however, is controversial. This is true, although we can perhaps say a few more general things about ethics than Rachels does in his introductory section. Ethical theories usually focus on how to treat others and how to think of ourselves and others abstractly in terms of value. Of course, the more specific we make our definition of ethics, the more likely we are to rule out certain types of ethical theories, and the more controversial our definition will become. Sometimes a distinction is made between the term ethics and morality, but we'll be using the terms interchangeably in this course. Rachel's minimum conception of morality. In Chapter 1, James Rachels gives what he takes to be a minimum conception of morality. He says that any moral or ethical theory must meet two requirements. It must include a requirement of reason. The theory must employ reason to determine how we ought to behave. This says that the right thing to do morally, or the right attitude to have, etc., is that which is justified by the best reasons. Note that reason here is supposed to separate morality from mere opinion. Mere opinion or matters of taste do not require a rational justification. The second part is a requirement of impartiality. The theory must attempt to be impartial. That is to say that similar cases should be treated in a similar way without special and justified favor to particular individuals or groups. In some ways, this follows from reason. The idea is simply that we're supposed to be objective. So as an example of what this means, suppose that you have a principle that says it is wrong to lie. Then making a special exception to that rule just because you really want to get out of a speeding ticket, or making a special exception in saying that a friend or family member who lied didn't do anything wrong, without additional justification to show that these cases are somehow different from those you apply your general rule to, would violate the principle of impartiality. Of course, as Rachel himself notes, not every ethical theory accepts this minimum. But these are common qualities that most ethical theories, especially in the Western analytical tradition, tend to strive for. Nevertheless, in upcoming modules, we will see some views that reject this conception, such as ethical subjectivism. The anatomy of an ethical theory. Almost every ethical theory that we will run across in this course can be broken down into distinct pieces, which I call the anatomy of an ethical theory. Almost every ethical theory begins with the conception of the good. The good can be more than one thing, but very often it is just one. This good is the thing to be strived for. Of course, just knowing what the good is isn't enough in itself to be or achieve the good. And so the second major part of almost any ethical theory is the method by which to achieve or attain the good described in the first part. To separate the ethical theory from mere opinion or matters of taste, both the conception of the good and the method for achieving the good each need at least one, and often more, justifications. In the case of the good, the justifications are about why that particular thing or things should be considered the ultimate good. In the case of method, the justification is often implicit. It explains how following the method achieves the good. So here's what the anatomy of an ethical theory looks like. It has a concept of the good, meaning morally good. It has a justification of why one should believe that the good is what the theory purports it to be. And there may be other justifications. Next, it has a method of achieving the good, whether it is living a good life, being a good person, or doing morally good things. Then there is a justification of why this method works to achieve the good. And again, there may be other justifications. You should take careful note of this anatomy, as we will be using it to help us understand and classify ethical theories throughout the rest of the semester. And that is the end of the presentation. As promised, this first presentation was very short. Most presentations will be much longer, so you should be prepared for that. This one was so short because during the first week of courses you have the syllabus to go through and the class to acclimate to. It is, however, an important presentation. You need to familiarize yourself with this anatomy of an ethical theory as well as the basic conception of morality. Both of these ideas will be important throughout the course. Until next time.